A week ago Friday, I experienced a deep restoration moment. The Jenkins Estate is an 11-acre green space near our home. There's an old restored home used for weddings, tea parties, and other social gatherings. There are beautiful gardens and 4 miles of trails in the outer part of the property. It's nestled on a hill, and on the top of the hill is Camp Rivendale, which serves as a day camp space in the summers. Camp Rivendale also has a glorious and bright children's play space, which has stood sad and silent these past 6 months. At one point in the middle of the summer, the swings were actually chained together to reinforce the mandates of the governor printed on inflexible signs, "Playground closed." It might seem strange to you, but one of my deepest and most heartfelt prayers has been for the playgrounds to open up again. I wanted to share the hiking paths with my grandchildren, so last Friday we finished up school and headed out for a walk. I warned them that there was a playground near the parking lot, but that it was closed, so they would not be able to play. When we arrived at Camp Rivendale and pulled into a parking space facing the playground, there were children on the play structure. The swings were free. The ugly, menacing signs were gone, and only the regular park rules commanded our attention. I wept. "Guys, look, the playground is open." They bargained with me. "We will walk too, but can we play first?" Of course. 10 minutes, they said. An hour and 45 minutes later, we headed up the hill for our walk. Good thing I brought snacks and water. We walked about 2 miles and sat off the path to eat a bit. There was a long hill to climb back to the car, and legs were dragging. Up at the top, I opened the car door and looked toward the tired children. "Mamu, you promised us we could play 10 more minutes in the playground." 10 minutes it was, and then home for late lunch after 1 p.m. When the Lord restored the lives of Zion, we were like ones dreaming. "Guys, the playground is open. Come, look." Then our mouths were filled with laughter and our tongues with rejoicing. Tears poured down my face at the memory of that open play space. Yesterday, my husband and I went up to walk the path at the Jenkins Estate. I cautiously looked at the playground, not wanting to look, partially expecting to see the swings chained up again. But they were still free. They are still free. Then they said among the nations, "The Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us." As I stood and pushed my grandchildren on the swings, I talked with 2 other moms who were there with their children. All of us were giddy with relief at being outdoors, at watching the children run from one thing to the next, at hearing the sounds of their laughter and play. The Lord has done great things for us. Psalm 126 is a community lament, one of the 2 in the Psalms of Ascents. One scholar characterizes the Psalms as joy remembered and joy anticipated. In the psalm, the community of faith calls on God to come to its aid as it struggles through a difficult situation. The psalm has 2 stanzas, verses 1 through 3 and verses 4 through 6. The first stanza recalls God's past acts of restoration and the emotions of joy and celebration of laughter that accompanied those saving acts. The clause that mentions the Lord restoring the lives of Zion likely refers to the return of the people to the land following the Babylonian exile. But within the broader biblical narrative, the phrase calls many divine restorations to mind. The restoration of Sarah to Abraham, the restoration of Joseph to Jacob and Joseph's brothers, the restoration of the people to the land after the Exodus, the restoration of the ark to the people after the Philistines captured it, the birth of the Messiah, the restoration of Jesus to his parents, the resurrection. What restorations can you think of in your life? The phrase, "we were like those who dream," brings to the imagination both theological and emotional meaning. Thinking theologically, those who dream are prophets, those who receive visions from God. The meaning then is that the divinely inspired restoration includes the reopening of lines of communication between God and people. In terms of the emotional content, those who receive visions often experience and express ecstatic joy, like David dancing beside the ark as it was brought into Jerusalem. The picture then is of spontaneous and uncontainable joy. Our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue with shouts of joy. This first stanza also contains the surprising testimony concerning God's gracious deeds in the entire Old Testament. The nations, that is, the very people who worship other gods, who often threatened Israel and who caused Israel to go into exile, these nations praised God. The very people who, during years in Babylon, looked down upon, harassed, and abused God's people, these very nations watched God restore the people to their land and to their God, and they said, "The Lord has done great things for them." Even more surprising, as the nations testify to God's restorative acts, the people of Israel respond with their own testimony, repeating the words of the nations verbatim. The Lord has done great things for us. How is this even possible? God's gracious and faithful acts of restoration are so self-evident that even the blind nations can see them. And because the blind nations see those acts, the even often more blind people of God can see them too. In the second stanza, the people ask God to restore them once again, in order that they may rejoice yet again. The psalm paints images of bounty and overflow, dry riverbeds coursing with torrents of water, farmers weeping as they plant because they do not expect a harvest, those same farmers singing with joy as they harvest because creation has produced grain in abundance. These images may reflect a prayer for rescue from drought, but the images also may simply be metaphors for a people believing in God's restoring actions in many different crises. Crises of spiritual drought, of national military defeat, plague, etc. The dry riverbeds, the seeds, even the sheaves give a picture of future provision and an invitation to be prepared for God's provision. These are the beginnings of multiplied blessings. The dry riverbeds were ruts in the desert that filled to overflowing when the rains came. Do you and I have the ruts, the places prepared in our hearts to receive and channel the blessings and God's abundance when it comes? Seeds, they carry so much potential. Think of zucchini, or the abundance held in one small apple. The sheaves contain more grain as well as the promise of bread for the sustenance of life. Since March, we have all been in growing need of restoration. We are still waiting. We have little glimmers of hope. The opening playgrounds were one of my signs for rejoicing. I'm sure you have yours as well. You may have remembered and even mentioned a sign of God's restoration in the past. That is one thing we can do to keep our focus steady on God's provision and restoration. Keep your eyes and ears open for stories of restoration coming from unexpected sources. Someone who might seem disconnected from God, like the nations in this psalm, may speak as a witness to God's restoring grace and peace. Check your spiritual preparedness. In this exhausting, stretching time, I felt my soul grow dry, my focus waver in the heat of the desert. The rains are coming, maybe soon, maybe still a long ways off. Let us be prepared to receive. Let us be looking for God's provision, God's acts of restoration and healing. Realize you hold in your hands and lives the seeds for sowing. There will be sheaves and fruit from this time. I've been on a few webinars where a poll is offered during the session. One question that seems to reappear is, how do you feel about Zoom during this pandemic time? In a poll of United Methodist clergy and laity, the percentages were 93% yes or in favor and 7% no, not in favor. At first consideration, I would join the 7%. I don't like to communicate via Zoom, but when I consider what Zoom has enabled us to do, I feel compelled to reluctantly join the 93%. I can worship with you. We can have meetings together. I can carry on the work of the district and the conference that I'm committed to do with the power of Zoom. Beyond that, I'm blessed to be able to connect with my granddaughter for art lessons every week via Zoom. We never would have thought of that without this pandemic. My girls and I enjoyed a tea party on Zoom back in August and included my 96-year-old mother. It's not my first choice, I admit, but it's enabled a good deal of communication and connection to continue at some level. I don't like some of these seeds, God. I resist this solution even if it does come from you, even if it does bear fruit that I did not expect. I think I move back and forth from sowing in tears and reaping in joy. Thanks be to God that He allows me to be in that space. May we all be on the lookout for God's restoration. It is coming. Let's be ready. Amen.